of the Vedas. Because it creates that kind of an atmosphere in oneself. So if one did it with that devotion and that spirit, it would automatically stop a lot of other things. But the devotion and the sincerity is what counts. Not doing the mantras as they necessarily do them in temples just as a profession. That's not what is implied.
So can you go to DC tomorrow and help George Bush? Do a little bit of self-purification so he can stop destroying the world.
He wants to be helped.
That would be great.
There's a question from the audience. Are internal forces driven by external forces? And actually in social psychology, it's a whole field devoted to showing how different environments will make people act differently, and that you're really very much influenced by that. And so I guess perhaps you could answer this question with regard to whether the text in any way address those external forces as well as the internal.
Okay, so what I understand on this, the relation between the individual and society is this, that the ultimate goal of each individual is to realize his self-perfection. So he has to do that journey. Now in that journey there would be helpers as well as deterrent factors. So even society can act like these Dasyus and Pandis or like the Indras. So in our society there are certain forces which help you, which encourage you to become a better individual. So they are like that at that moment. But you can't blame them because you are making the choice. The ultimate sarama, which side of the battle you fight, is entirely in your hands. Entirely. So there's no two way about that in the Veda.
I'm with you.
What a contrast to other forms of religious practice where the final resolution is not in your hands. Where there is somebody else who decides.
The ultimate final resolution is not in your hands, probably. There are several levels of... That's a tricky one.
So, excuse me. Actually, I asked that question, and the original intention was a little bit different. When we talk about all these states, we talk about internal forces, right? So that means they are part of us. We just need to recognize them. That's a fact. When you talk about social forces could be different. When I talked about external forces, I was more intended towards natural forces, that we tend to behave in a certain way because we are either synchronized with the nature or we are not, right? So the way we behave, correct me, that it is also dependent on nature, and I expect that those are also forces which changes our behavior. So there is internal, which is the way we are wired. And there are external, which the wiring gets changed depending on natural forces.
What I would understand from this is that if you observe that even in a natural environment that you're saying, there are different individuals who behave differently in the same environment. So what is causing these differences? So that is each individual's reactions to those natural situations. So it's finally a lot depends on the individual and his reaction, how he lets things influence him and grow from that, or either get carried away, or whichever. So I think ultimately it all lies in the hands of the individual.
But to what extent these reactions or responses to external forces, to what extent they are made through choice or volition, as opposed to just impulsive reaction.
The thing is, the whole of the Vedic journey is a demand from the individual to become conscious, more and more conscious. So the more and more conscious he becomes, the less he will be a victim of circumstance. So irrespective of where he is, if he is a conscious human being, he can benefit from even the most adverse circumstances. And that is these decisions that he's making when he recognizes these different forces that act directly in his own system, or which take the faces of different forms around him. It can be natural, it can be, you name it, and it can be anything. If you watch the film Matrix, there is this interesting Smith who can become anything. But his goal is to stop this person reaching his goal, no? Neo. So one could understand it in that sense also, probably.
Could
Yes,
you
please.
write down, and because you have a whole pile of them. Omkar, please take a question.
It's too bad we have to break the spontaneity because I'm sure people are reacting.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
okay.
take-
Oh, let her, let her.
Okay, no, we have time, so it's okay.
okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So how does, I think it's related to this, how does karma play into this? Like you said that even if you're fully conscious, you might not be able to achieve what you want to, right? So could karma be playing into it?
What do you understand as karma?
Like past deeds, both good and bad? Isn't Vedas all about your karma?
No. In a sense, yes, because it depends which way you choose. That will determine what you get. So if that student, for example, in that particular example, if that student, kept getting distracted, and
So why is he getting distracted? Is he like destined to get distracted, or is it because of...
But that's what that journey is all about, right? To become more conscious.
yeah, to become more conscious. I guess the more one becomes conscious, the more one can free oneself from apparent impositions of your past life or circumstances. Until then, it's true that there is a certain, that's how I understand it, that there is a certain flow that has started because of your deeds. And you have to sort of face that somewhere.
Yeah, there's some momentum in place.
There is a momentum in place, but it's not ultimate. You can break that momentum with how fast you choose to come out of it. That is an important point.
How would you define the term conscious in this context that we are talking about? It is not simply being conscious means being awake and knowing about, aware of oneself.
Yeah, it's your inner awareness.
Yeah.
The whys and the wheres and the whats of your life, probably. Why do you do what you do? Why do you choose what you choose?
Yeah, so
Where are you headed?
just to reflect a little bit, because one of the things that's happening here in the Western, and actually everywhere, is that there's a growing, and this is just to really reflect back on this notion that at least from how you've represented the Vedas and the tradition, it's really about how far can I extend the expansiveness, the extensiveness, some of the words that you used in the text, of the mind, to really be like the sun, illuminated, and to achieve a state of sarva, or to achieve this unobstructed state. What's interesting now in the West, in terms of psychology, which is becoming much more biological, for better or for worse, human beings are becoming more mechanical. I can put a heart machine, I can replace parts of your brain tissue. We're becoming much more genetically focused. Not that that necessarily explains more than other nature, other environmental factors, but we're reaching more and more for reductionistic explanations. And so at least what you presented today is, using the psychological perspective, is that the mind, the ability to use one's mind, and the innate illumined qualities, the cows, I like that, of the mind, actually are already there, that they need to be unearthed, so to speak. So it's just an interesting tension, because at least now in the West, most of psychology is becoming grounded in biology, and where we're reducing the explanatory power of will, conscious will, that's free from priming or influence. So when you mentioned about consciousness, conscious awareness, and we know that from brain, because that's one of the things that I study, most of how we process every moment of wake and sleep is most of it is actually not conscious processing. It's neural processing that's happening on a time scale. It's much faster. Having said that, there are certain rishis, yogis, meditators currently living who do claim through their practice to be able to refine their attention so that they can become aware of moment to moment to moment to moment unfolding, occurring, unfolding, creating, sacrificing, creating, unfolding, living, dying. So there are people who claim that there are much further and more extensive capacities of mind. But it is interesting to see that it's in the face of our yearning to concretize in biology genetics, which even now the evidence that we have is not more explanatory than what we had 20, 30 years ago. But you can put in a fake arm, a state reg.